Well, today, we're going to continue on our journey about self-love. And as if you recalled, as we talked about self-love, the first week we talked about what is it? And we have to define what self-love means to us. The next day we talked about what is being authentic. Because if we're not being authentic, then we can't be loving ourselves. So we can't live from the perspective of ever pleasing others. Last week we talked about the idea of the power of no. That we have to learn to say no to that which is not us, because if we say yes to appease others, to please others, then what we're doing is we're giving away our power and we're not living up to our highest greatness. And so I come to the idea now that, okay, we've got these things in motion, but there's still more that must come to get this idea of self-love, because if there wasn't a whole bunch, we'd all be in self-love right now. So the next aspect that comes in, and it really related to the song that was just played, I've come a long way from where I've been. But in order to come a long way from where I've been, you've got to leave the past behind. And you see, that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not this act that you go and you say, Father Almighty, forgive me for I have sinned. That's what I was taught. That was going outside of myself asking for forgiveness. No, forgiveness is about going within myself and realizing that I am on a path, I am on a journey, I am the individualization of the infinite mind, and I am getting clarity and guidance through every thought, word, and action that I do. And if I'm not in alignment, I simply look at it. I decide that I'm out of alignment. I let myself be present with it. I let it go, and I move on. You see, forgiveness is very simply this: letting go of the past. A lot of times people say it's let go and let God. Well, if we're going to let go and let God, what does that mean? It means let go and be in the now. Because if you're not in the now, you can't possibly be into this idea of God. Because God only exists in the now. So if you're living in the past, if you're living attached to an event that happened in the past, you can't possibly be with God. And so let's explore this, because the idea of forgiveness sounds easy. But when things happen in our lives, it's sometimes a challenge to demonstrate, to use, to be with. So I know a couple. And this couple were going through a process of getting married. And in the process of getting married, everyone was on board until about 3 weeks before the wedding. And 3 weeks before the wedding, the bride's parents decided out of the blue to change their minds, and they were going to have nothing to do with the wedding. They backed out of the restaurant, they backed out of the hall, they backed out of the musicians. They were not coming to the wedding. Arrangements were made, plans were changed, the wedding continued. On the day of the wedding, the parents were called by the bride asking, come to the wedding. And the wedding started, and the parents weren't there. And the wedding went on, and the couple was married. And the reception happened. It was a beautiful event. The next day, this couple went to the parents who didn't come to the wedding and said, we want you to be a part of our life. We want you to share our life. And a choice was made by the parents at that time not to. And so giving the idea of what happened, 5 years goes by before any contact at all was made. And in the 5th year, something came about within them, this couple, that they decided to make a move. And they reached out. And a connection happened. Now, over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it became easier for the 4 of them, the in-laws and the couple, to come together, because it couldn't happen all at once, to the point where all of them no longer had any charge. Do you hear that? They had no charge about the event. So the event had become neutral. There was as much good attached to the event as there was what we would call bad. So when the good and the bad came together, it neutralized itself. And in the neutralizing of itself, there was no more emotional attachment. There was no more being pulled to the past. And without the emotional attachment, without being pulled to the past, this event that happened years ago no longer was influencing their lives. And what happened for all four of them is they were free to live without that. You see, we've been taught that forgiveness is something we do when something happens. When that big thing happens, and I want to share with you a new idea, that is, forgiveness is something we do every moment of every day of our lives. So forgiveness is about accepting what happens to us, seeing how it is in the direction of where we want to go, and knowing that in that we can now continue in the path that we've chosen, or we can correct and change the path and move. And so the idea of forgiveness is knowing that everything we're choosing, everything we're doing is simply a decision on our infinite path. Did you hear that word? It's an infinite path. Because at Agape, we believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. So if you buy into the concept that there's an infinite intelligence in the universe, and it has birthed itself in and through and as you, and that you are this infinite intelligence individualized, that means that you will be forever and ever expanding and growing and becoming more. And therefore, everything that you do is simply a guidepost for you as you move on the path to a greater awakening, a greater creative power, a greater expression. So there's a lot of challenge here because we talk about this idea of the law. And the law, we say, is an aspect in the mind of God that whatever is impressed upon that law, the law freely gives. It does not judge. The law takes our unconscious and our conscious thoughts and it creates out of it. It does it over and over and over again. It does not know how to do anything else. So the sum total of what we are is in our thoughts is always being created. But there's an idea that I want to talk about. When we take a thought of the past, an event of the past, and we focus on it, the law of attraction says the more we focus on it, the more we attract of it. Do you hear that? The law of attraction does not care what type of thoughts we're putting out there. It simply brings to us more of what we're thinking. So when we're looking at this idea of forgiveness, and we don't forgive, and we stay in a hostile environment, we stay in a state of damn them, the hell with them, I'll be damned if I do anything with them. You think I'm going to reach out to them after what they did? Do you feel the emotional charge in my voice? Now that emotional charge in my voice is poison within my own body. Because as I keep thinking that thought and I create that emotional poison, my body starts to feel it and my body will have an effect because I am putting a cause into the law. Are you hearing that? I may not even be thinking it. It doesn't matter if I'm thinking it. My thoughts and my emotions that are lined up with it are creating that. So forgiveness is not only great to keep us on a path where we want to go and to free us, it's good for our health. Because if you talk to the medical profession, they will tell you that stress is the number one thing that causes all illness. And think about this. If you were not attached to your past, would you have stress? Think about that. If you were not judging your life based on your past, all stress would disappear. When all stress disappears, the body can naturally heal itself because it's the body's natural place to be in perfect homeostasis. The body only knows naturally to be in homeostasis. So when we are in stress, if we are in a state of unforgiveness, if we are emotionally attached to the past, the body hears that. There's stress dealing with that. It has to channel its energy to relieve the stress instead of recreating our body in a healthy fashion, which is the intention and what the body was built for. So it doesn't matter what medicines the doctor give you. The medicines will cover. They will mask the symptoms because they're dealing at the level of secondary cause. The level of first cause is the cause. It's the natural cause. It's the idea. It's the word spoken. It's the thought had. It's the action in alignment with that. So the idea is we take what the doctors give us, we allow that to help us as we stabilize ourselves, but then we switch our thought to health. We switch our thought to let go of the past. What's so interesting is this idea. When I withdraw or when you withdraw your thought from an event, the charge doesn't happen immediately. And guess what? That's perfectly natural. Think about a plant. If you have a plant and you were to cut the roots of the plant would continue to live for a while. And then after a period of time, the plant would no longer be, it would die. That's the same thing when you cut your ties to the past. When you do the forgiveness work, the emotional charge doesn't happen immediately. There's a bit of it. And then it continues, and it continues, and it continues. And because it's no longer being fed, it just disappears. And then when we think about that event that triggered us, we can talk about it. And guess what? There's no judgment, and there is no emotion with it. That's when we know forgiveness has worked. You see, we talk about this all the time, and as metaphysicians, sometimes we beat ourselves on the head with the spiritual metaphysical hammer, saying, oh, I'm not thinking right. I'm beating myself up. I haven't changed right away. But there's a natural process as we think to evolve into something. There's a process of building a belief. And what I love about this idea of forgiveness is that if we do not forgive, there's no way we can love. Because love is always without judgment. Do you hear that? Love is always without judgment. So if we're judging anything, we're not loving. And if we're not loving, who are we not loving? Ourselves. Because that's the only love we can do. We can love ourselves. Others can feel that love of ourselves and they'll want to be with us and we can share it, but they're not going to make us loving. Love is something we give, and the law immediately says the more you give of it, the more you receive. The more you forgive yourself, the more things will fall into alignment, and I don't even want to use it. I'm going to say it. The more you'll be forgiven. You'll be forgiven by yourself because that's the only place that you're going to be forgiven. By the higher power within you. It's not something outside. It does not matter if someone else forgives you. It only matters if you forgive yourself. So if you have a parent, if you have a grandparent, if you have an estranged spouse, if you have an estranged child, whoever it is in your life, and there's forgiveness work to do, it does not matter if they are alive. It doesn't matter if they're present. It matters, can you shift the thought and allow it to be neutral? Can you see the good? Can you see the other than good? Can you bring them together so all of a sudden there's no emotional charge? It's amazing the simplicity of it. Buddha said this: to be in unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Jesus said it differently. Jesus said, before you come into the temple, forgive. Let's translate that. Before you can love, forgive. Before you can have peace, forgive. Before you can see oneness, forgive. Before you can be healthy, forgive. Before you can have harmony, forgive. Because when you forgive, you cut the strings to the past, and you're present to be in the now, where all of your power, all of your joy, all of your abundance, everything that you are is. How simple is that? What I understand clearer than anything is that when a person, an individual, becomes clear about what they want, they set an intention of how they want to express and to experience life, and they make a decision and say that I will live a joyful life, they will align every thought, every word, every person will come into their life. They will have a process there that they will be guided toward that. And when they do that, they will start a thinking process that shifts the unconscious and the conscious nature of their thought process. And then the mind that is creating all things will take it and birth it into their experience. But the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a decision. I choose self-love. One of the things that we talk about at Agape all the time is we are a teaching center of self-empowerment. Because the only power that exists in your life is the power that you claim from within yourself. And the power that you claim from within yourself is greater than any power anyone has ever demonstrated. Even Jesus said it when he said, "This I do and you can do and more." He never claimed he was the ultimate. He claimed he was an expression of the Father. And he said we are all expressions of the Father. Every great religion, every great spiritualist who's ever walked the planet has said that. Einstein was more noted for his spiritual work than he was for his scientific work. All of the great philosophers, Plato, Socrates, Plotinus, they all talked about the idea that there is oneness, and forgiveness takes us and allows us to be in our natural state. And you see, when we're in our natural state, we can love. We can self-love. We can love God. We can love ourselves. We can love others. We can love the world. And to be in that state, to be in non-judgment, we must forgive. You've heard the words. The words were very spoken and very clear. The question is, do you want to let go? Do you want a life that's full of joy? Do you want a life where you can look yourself in the mirror, look yourself in your eyes, and say, I love you more than life itself? Because you are all life has come to express. And life could not be more proud. Because you are the light of the world. It's just been under a basket. And today we've taken that basket and we've said, no more. I'm going to let go of the past, and I'm going to love myself.